All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fort Worth Music Academy podcast. And I know I say this every week, but I'm really excited for our guest today because he is one of our fabulous instructors at Fort Worth Music Academy, the one and only Stephen Harper. Welcome, Stephen.
Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. So what kind of inspired us to do this, and I guess we need to do this with all of the teachers, but I'm always amazed at how smart everybody on the team is. And, I don't mean to brag, but I've done a really good job of picking awesome people that work at our school. And we always, just in our downtime, have these really great, thoughtful conversations. And as Steve and I were talking a couple weeks ago, I was like, man, we should record this. This might be good for the podcast. But we got into some pretty serious issues, not in a bad way or anything, but in a way that I'm a little scared of doing this podcast because I fear I may be canceled or the school may be canceled. And I don't know. We're just going to kind of see where it goes. So to start off, Stephen, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about...
Take it as it comes.
Yeah. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are, how you got started in music, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, as Eric said, my name is Stephen Harper, and I'm a teacher at Fort Worth Music Academy. So I got started with music at a very, very young age, actually around the age of 2. And we had a piano in my house. And as kids would do, I'd just go and start banging on the piano. But my dad and my mom, both being musicians, my dad on the professional level, my dad was like, hey, if you want to know what this does, I can show you. And I'm like, yeah, cool. So he would show me little things and basic things on the piano. And then being on the road, he was like, okay, let's put you in lessons. So I started lessons at 3 on piano. It was my very first instrument. And then I started playing violin at 4. And then fast track, I kind of quit violin because... it's a hard instrument, guys. I'm just telling you.
It's very hard.
Don't do it unless it's a very hard instrument. So you got to be dedicated, and I wasn't. So I stayed with piano, and then kind of quit piano because I hated to read music. So I stopped piano, and then I started picking up guitar at the age of 12. And from then, I've been playing guitar ever since. It's actually my job to play guitar and bass, which is kind of cool. I'm currently a student at the University of Texas at Arlington studying jazz, which is funny because I hated to read music and now I have to read music for for my degree, right? I also play around when COVID's not happening. I do gigs, whether they're jazz gigs or wedding gigs or church gigs or whatever it may be. So,
And you were kind of getting set up to do some touring, weren't you, before all of this went down?
Yeah, so UTA was actually taking their jazz orchestra to Hawaii. So I was supposed to be in Hawaii for a week and a half, and we were going to do some clinics and things like that. I was playing a young adults conference in Pennsylvania, so that was going to happen. And there were just a few other things around town. I had some few pretty decent gigs lined up in town, a couple festivals playing, and all got canceled around March, April. So, yeah.
Yeah. How was that for you? Just knowing that you've been working towards that, and you felt like you were starting to get some momentum going. How did it feel to have that just suddenly shut off?
It sucked. I think everybody in some form or fashion is in the same place right now. But just getting to do what I love and having the opportunity to do it a lot was super exciting. And then, at the flip of a hat, everything just changed. And so really trying to adjust not just what I was going to do all summer, but my expectations of how life was going to go. I had plans for saving up for things that I needed, and then money's gone. So, it was a pretty big life adjustment. But I would say through the summer, I've been able to adjust pretty well and get things on track.
And at least you didn't lose your teaching income, right?
Exactly. No, that was a huge blessing. And a lot of people, a lot of musicians don't like to teach, or they don't. And I love to teach, first of all. So it's not even really about the income, but it's nice to diversify who you are as a musician, because then you have multiple streams of income.
I agree. And teaching is I remember when I first told people I was going to get into teaching music, they were just like, you're going to be a guitar teacher? Are you going to be able to survive? And I'm like, this is one of the most stable forms of income that you can probably have. It's
No, it
pretty
really
nice.
is.
Yeah, and if you're teaching a lot of
Yeah.
students, it's not like you work. you- I mean, you kind of work for one person, but you kind of work for all of those people. And so you're if
Right.
you have a salary for a corporation and they let you go, you lose all of your income instantly. Whereas with this, you
Yeah.
might lose a student here, you might lose a student there, but then you replace them. So it's kind of like, you might have 50, it's like you have 50 employees, but only a couple of them might fire you at a time.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of funny because you don't really think about how much people really want music or need music until like this time happened, and I'm like, the demand is still there. Like, obviously people and their paychecks, and they may have to cancel, or but like we
Yeah.
still have a school, and a lot of schools are still able to work too because people still need it. People still
Yeah.
want it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, we did have a few students that obviously had to make some changes because of everything that happened. But for the most part, our retention rate, I don't know the exact number, but our retention rate was very high. So we're
Yeah.
really grateful. And I say this all the time, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse when I say it, but we really have the best families that come to our school, and they're so
Yeah.
supportive of everything we do. And I think it's a testament to you guys as teachers and what y'all do, and it shows that you love teaching. It's interesting
Hmm.
that you mentioned that, because I have a lot of friends who own music schools and who are teachers, and behind closed doors, they gripe about how they hate teaching. They're like, I'm
Yeah.
only doing this until I can become a rock star or whatever. And they really don't like it. But I like what you said of it being kind of a facet of what you do, because for me, I love the thrill of performing. I love the
Hmm.
thrill of writing and recording music and playing in a band, but I don't think I could just do that. I really enjoy, and I get a lot of joy from watching somebody else go through that journey and being able to come alongside them and guide them and show them everything not to do, all the mistakes that I made growing
Right.
up.
No, like it's super cool, and especially like when you see their face light up and they've been working on this song that they've wanted to know for so many years, or they grew up listening to, and it's just it brings me joy to see other people succeed. So, and I think that's kind of the mark of who should be a teacher. So, I think
Yeah,
I'll keep teaching regardless of. I'll keep performing for sure. I love performing, but I'll
yeah.
also keep teaching for a while.
Yeah, and they sometimes in like business books and stuff, they'll ask like, well, if you were if money was not an issue, like, what would you still do for fun? And I'm
Hmm.
like, teaching. I would still do that for fun.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, maybe not as many hours or something, but I think there's a piece of me that would die if I didn't do it at some
Hmm.
level. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like that. So you started playing piano when you were 3?
Three. Three. My first teacher was Miss Monica Hotstetler at SMU, and they had this kids program, but they didn't allow 3-year-olds in, and so she was like, "It's fine, I'll take him in. We'll work through some stuff." And she taught me for a year, and then I stayed kind of in that SMU kids program for a few years. Um,
Did you have your parents said like did you make progress during that year, or do you even remember any of it?
I remember a little bit. Like, it's funny. I remember her and I remember the songs we played, but like I don't even remember necessarily going often. Like, I just kind of remember like, oh, I remember this song, and I'll pick it out on the piano still. I think I still made progress, as much as a 3-year-old can for that age. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever stopped growing until I decided I wanted to quit.
Yeah. Yeah, cuz like for us, 4 is the youngest we'll go for Kids Rock, as you know, which is fun because it gives the kids a really fun outlet playing in a band. I guess I'm doing a plug. I didn't mean to, but it works, I think, because of the way the program is structured. The kids get to have fun, and it's low pressure, and they don't have to do any like things that are too complex, but they do start developing those rhythm and musical skills early. But like
Right.
traditional piano lessons, the youngest we've ever successfully had anyone was 5. And of course, I, with my own kids, tested it. Like when they were like 2, 3, like, let's try something. And I just found, like, for straight up piano, trying to learn out of a book, I couldn't get them to really get the ball rolling until they were each about 5. So that's incredible. You started at 3.
Yeah, no, it was pretty awesome, like thinking on it. But I agree though. 5 is a pretty good age because before I was teaching here, I was actually teaching kids a lot, and I had one student who was under the age of 5 who was like remarkable. And other than that, everyone, I mean, they had fun and they learned, but like it wasn't really productive. It was more of
Right.
like, hey, let's
Right.
just kind of hang out kind of thing. But 5 is a really good age to start.
Yeah, there's definitely that's why I really like having students come in for an intro lesson, because sometimes if the student's too young, I'll be like, I just got to tell the parents, I'm like, look, yes, we could take your money, but you would be better off just waiting 6 months or waiting a year, because the
Right.
results that are going to happen in this first year are going to pale in comparison to like what they would do in just a few months if you wait another year,
Right.
so
Right.
sometimes it is better to wait. It all just depends on the kid. So yeah, it's interesting. You said you were teaching more kids before. Do you have more adult students right now than kid students?
I do. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, it's really
So,
interesting because everyone talks about the kids market is really where it's at. But I've pushed back on other music school owners for years, just saying, look, 30% of our students are consistently adults, and they're
yeah.
good and they stick around. Like our adults stay around way longer than I would
Yeah.
have expected. So it's what is it for you? What do you like about teaching adults, and what do you like about teaching kids? Because for me, I like them both, but in different ways.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. So, I think teaching kids for me is cool because, especially since I started as a kid, getting to help someone on that journey and like really help them develop as music is something that they might love later on in life. Like they don't really know, they see like fire trucks and they're like, oh, that's cool, when they're super young. Or if they get into early teens, they're like, well, I like sports and I like this and I like this and I like that. But like you as a music teacher can really help them decide this is something I want to do, whether it's as a serious hobby or as a job. And it helps them learn. Like there's studies that have shown, and I did a paper on this in college actually, that arts help uh, the brain and help kids learn in other areas. So like if you're consistent in arts, then you'll be good at other things. So that's cool for kids. For adults, it's similar, but it's a little bit different. Is a lot of adult students are like, I've always wanted to do this. I never had the time to. I have this business or I work in this industry. I never had time to do this. And so I'm like, okay, so what music do you like? And they're like, well, I really love Metallica, or I really love Crosby, Stills, and Nash, or whoever. And so it's like, okay, so let's work through some of these things and let's backtrack and say, this is the song you loved as a child. Now you're going to get to play it at this time. And I've also seen through COVID, one of my students, it's really a good release for that student to come in for lessons every week because we just get to sit down for 30 minutes. Nothing else matters. Not a Metallica reference, but nothing really matters. But that lesson, and he's like, this is the best time I have all week. So
Yeah.
like that is what I love about adult students.
I love hearing that, because that's, part of our mission. One of our core values is that students leave feeling better than when they arrived. And it says it on the main
Mm,
page of our website. We want this to be the highlight of your week, because that's how it was for me. And it still is. My lessons with my teacher are like the highlight for me. And of course, I'm not the target market for lessons. Like someone who's in their like mid 30s with young kids and running a business, like that is not our target demographic. Although I'm surprised at how many people we have in their late 20s and early 30s
right.
as students. But so for me, I only take lessons once a month with my teacher. But when I do, I really want to take lessons every week again, but not until things kind of clear up on my schedule a little. Because Greg Howe he's a slave driver, and if I got to practice a lot, and so having a month in between lessons gives me enough time. But it really is the highlight of my month, and it'll be the highlight of my week when I get to do it again. And I want it to be that way for our students as well. So I'm glad
Yeah.
to hear that.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about now. Let's get into cancel culture territory, because this is where like I'm like somebody's going to get me for this. But you and I were talking, and I don't even remember how this came up. but you were talking about what it was like growing up Black in America, and things have been very tense
Right.
lately, and it for everybody, I think. And I don't know. So you started offering some really interesting insights for what it's like been for you. And I feel like you had some things that were a little bit different to say than what I'm typically hearing on the news. And I felt like it would be doing a service to our audience for you to be able to kind of share your perspective.
Right. Yeah. So, and actually, it's funny because music was the reason we got into the cancel culture discussion. So we were talking about certain songs and things, and that's kind of how we transitioned into that.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, growing up, I grew up in Texas, by the way. So I've lived in Texas my whole life, and growing up Black is not necessarily like an easy thing, but it's also a lot of what you see in the media isn't true for every Black person. So not every experience that you see in media, whether positive or negative, is true for every Black person. So for me, I see things, and just to clarify, this does not represent any of my Black or white friends or anything like that. But I see a lot of things on social media that celebrities post or is on the news about how white people have been privileged and uh, stop the privilege, and white people are inherently racist because of things that have happened in the past. And fortunately, that has not been my experience. When I interact with a lot of white people, I have a lot of good white friends, and they've been nothing but kind and nice to me. I haven't experienced that aspect. You see things about police officers and police brutality, but I was also the Black kid who, when I wanted to see a police car, I had three officers who were like, okay, yeah, I'll show you the police car. And they were all white. And so I tried to get in the back as a young kid does. And, I can't sit in the front, so I got to sit in the back. And they're like, no, 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 you don't go there. And I'm like, oh, why not? And they said, that's where bad people go. Did you do anything wrong? And I said, no. He said, so, okay, sit in the front seat. Then he let me flip the sirens on, and he let me do the lights. And, like, we were sitting in the parking lot, and people were turning their heads, and I'm sitting here playing with the sirens. Like, these are some of my experiences.
And how old were you when that happened?
I had to be like 6 or 7, because I remember I was playing soccer at the time, and we were leaving after my soccer game. We went to CC's, and then coming out of the CC's parking lot.
Where else would you go after soccer? CC's.
Right, exactly. Like,
Place
it's
to go.
CC's, Chuck E. Cheese, or Main Event. Like, those are the only three places we went as a soccer team when I was a kid. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was about 7 years old, and that's, my parents never taught me to be afraid of police. And a lot of people, and I'm not even going to say Black people, I'm going to say a lot of people in certain areas, because I think it transcends race. I think it's a certain people in certain areas or certain demographics, right?
Yeah, and it's very prevalent in punk rock culture as well. It's
Yeah.
it's a common thread in the music about hating cops, and
Right.
so, yeah, you're right.
Right. And so I was never taught to be scared of officers. I have friends who are my age who are Black, and they said that when they were younger, they would run when they saw a cop. They didn't do anything wrong, but they would just run because they knew certain things were going on in that area, or things would happen to their family members. But that never happened to me. And so I never had that. So when I see a cop, I would wave. Or I'd see a cop and I'd say, hey, thanks for protecting our cities. Like, that was just, and it's not that I was sheltered from the things of life. I knew what was going on. My parents are very open about everything. So ever since I was a child, we've had open conversations about like brutality, racism, sex discussions. Like, everything is on the table in my family. So I was never sheltered, but I was never scared either. And so that translates to, I get pulled over going home from my friend's house at 3 in the morning. We were just hanging out, chilling, being teenagers. And, cop pulls me over, and I'm speeding. And it's a white cop in a rural area. And I roll down my window, and he's like, you know why I pulled you over? I was like, well, I assume I was speeding since you pulled me over. I said, but I didn't realize I was. He's like, that's okay. And so I immediately handed him my license. He's like, look, I just wanted to give you a warning, tell you to slow down. You'll be on your way, right? No ticket, no nothing, didn't ask to search my car. And if you see my car, it's an old car. Like I could easily be profiled. I'm an easily profilable person with my hat on, with an old car, and like nothing happened, you know. And that's happened a couple times.
Did you, when you get pulled over, do you feel like there's any kind of a different fear that shows up? Or because I know the couple times I've been pulled over, it's terrifying. Like there's nothing like the feeling of seeing those lights come on behind you. And I don't know. Do you think that the way you feel when you get pulled over is different than that, or
I mean, I'm terrified because I don't want to lose money for a ticket. So,
right?
like
Me too.
that's number one. Like regardless of anything, I'm like I can't get a ticket, please. I can't get a ticket. So, but it's never really come in my mind of like, oh man, I'm being profiled. Like something could happen. You know, I was taught when I started driving, no matter who pulled you over, you know, you keep your hands on the steering wheel. If it's nighttime, you turn your lights on. You know, even take your hat off, make sure your hands are visible, have your license ready, have your insurance card ready. So like those are the things that I do, and I've never felt unsafe from being pulled over.
So do you think?
Whether
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying whether or not it was because I was speeding, or I've only been pulled over a couple times, but for speeding or then having a tail light out, and a lot of times it's just them being looking out for you kind of thing.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Do you think that so it sounds like maybe your perspective is a lot of this has to do with just how we're trained as kids by our parents, and we tend to react to how they respond to these kinds of things.
I think so, and I mean I think if you look at generations past, you know, if I look at my grandmother, for instance, my grandmother saw the civil rights movement happen. If I look at my mother saw um, crosses burned in black people's yards by the KKK. So like these are things that really did happen, and I think on the flip side, I think some people try and hush that and not talk about it. But I'm grateful because my family never projected their experiences onto me.
Mm.
So they taught me their experience. So I have the history. And I'll never forget the history of what they went through. But it was also never projected on me saying, because this happened to me, this person is bad, or you can't be around this person, or you should watch out for this. It was just, this is what happened, and this is how you act in these situations.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's yeah, that's pretty it is wild to think that it really wasn't that long ago
No.
that stuff was happening. Um, can you give an example? Have you experienced racism in some ways
Oh,
throughout
for
your life,
sure.
though?
For sure. Absolutely. It could be something small where nobody says anything, but you know, you walk into a store, and it's like, why is he in this store? You know, if you go to the mall or you want to walk through Neiman Marcus, or it's like, does he have money? Like people make comments, do you have money for this? Or like, I don't think you're supposed to be in here. Can I help you? What store are you looking for? Like things, little things like that. To you know, being called the N word, like it happens.
Mm.
But it never phased me because I look at racism as people are paying more attention to me than I'm paying attention to them.
Mm.
And so, unless you actually like physically get in my way, unless you physically put hands on me, I'm just going to go about my day because I know that there's something in you that's not right. And so, you know, I feel more sorry than scared. And I know that's kind of I'm not really shrugging it off my shoulder like it's a big deal, but I also know I'm like, okay, well, I have work tomorrow, so I can't deal with this. Like, you know, I
Yeah.
have things to
Wow.
do.
Wow, man, that's awesome. That's really incredible. I love that your just attitude and your whole perspective on all of
Yeah.
that. So I guess, but before we go, real quick, I'll just share for us as a school, unequivocally, that one of the things I've learned is like we've never discriminated against anybody. We've welcomed anybody through our doors. But what I learned in this, I had a business training in this business group I was in a few months ago, and we had a whole session on kind of this topic on like inclusion and racism and stuff. And at first I was kind of like, man, I don't need this. This isn't an issue for us. But one of the things the lady who was leading us pointed out was, she said, you don't have to, like, your business doesn't have to be super diverse, but it needs to be very clear that everyone is welcome.
Right.
And she's like, start paying attention to your advertising. Pay attention to what it looks like when people come into your place of business and stuff. And I started thinking about all the different kinds of people we do see and could see. And I think about, like, when you walk into our lobby and you see the pictures that are hanging up, and I start thinking, like, who is not represented here? And what if I was that person and I walked in and I saw myself not represented and everybody
Right.
else there looked different than me? I would feel like I wasn't welcome. And so the thing I'm trying to be more cognizant of is making sure that people see themselves represented in our advertising and in our culture and in our videos, so that they do feel like they can be a part, even though they could anyway.
Right.
I feel like people need to see that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I think that's good, is because there's a healthy balance between making sure people know and feel included, and then going out of your way to include people.
Right.
There's a healthy balance between that. Meaning, I think it's represented well in the school, because I think our school is very multicultural. I see white, black, Hispanic, Asian. Like, I see a big demographic, and a lot of schools don't have that. You know, but I think it's one of those things is, we don't. For instance, let's take the belts, right? Let's take the belt system and how we hang pictures up on the wall of the students, right? You can go look at those belt pictures and say, oh, it's diverse, but we don't just hang a picture up because someone is a different color, a different race. It's like, you still have to earn it. Right. But we do make sure that everyone is included, so hey, I can do this. Yeah. So no one walks in the school and feels like they can't do it unless they just don't work at it. Like, we make sure everybody knows, like, you can achieve this goal because, we're here for you.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, man, this has been, I've taken up all of your time, and as promised, I'm going to let you go because you're a really busy guy. Do you have any final thoughts about anything we've talked about today?
I think the main thing, especially on cancel culture subjects, I think it's important to be able to identify discrimination and racism, but realize it's not a one-way street. And it's not just from race to race. It happens within race. I've seen my Hispanic friends have Hispanic people racist against them. I've been racist, or people have been racist to me who were black. So I think it's important to know and identify discrimination, because I will say I do think we have to fix things in this country, but it comes with identifying things correctly. And I think if we can do that, then there will be a lot more unity than we're seeing right now.
Dude, 100%. You couldn't end it any better than that. Well, Stephen Harper, you are a wonderful human being and an incredible musician, and I'm honored to get to work with you. Tell people where they can find you other than at our music school. Where can they find your music and everything else you're up to?
You can find me on Instagram at Stephen Harper Music, StephenHarper Music. You can also find me playing, if you want to stream, Cornerstone Baptist in Arlington. I play there every Sunday. I also play at Baruch Hashem Messianic Synagogue on Saturdays, so you guys can check out.
Say that last one again.
It's Baruch Hashem, BaruchHashem, Messianic Synagogue on Saturdays. So you can check out one of those two services, and I'm playing there most Saturdays and Sundays. And yeah, or you can just find me somewhere in North Texas and come say hi.
All right, dude. Well, thanks so much for your time. And hey, you enjoy your Labor Day weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. Bye.